right, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Parag Khandhar. I teach at the University of Baltimore in the Community Development Clinic. We are so happy to have you here today. I'm not going to say much more. I'm going to hand it off to our wonderful presenters. Get ready to really be engaged. This is going to be, that's what the whole point of this is.
Fall asleep in this one.
Yes.
No.
I'm Kirtrina, Baxter,
And I'm Cahn.
and we work at the Public Interest Law Center in Philadelphia. And I'm the community organizer, and I work alongside
I'm a staff attorney,
dynamic lawyer next to me.
dynamic organizer right
And I'm
here.
also a food grower, so I grow food, and I work at a farm as well. So I'm sort of on both sides of the coin.
And I grow in my backyard, and I'm the weeder in our community garden plot. Not in charge there. So what we do at the Public Interest Law Center, we run a project called the Garden Justice Legal Initiative. We provide direct legal support, we do policy advocacy, we do community education, and we do community organizing with community gardeners and market farmers. It started almost 3 years ago out of a Skadden fellowship that was just me as lawyer and a host of volunteers, and then found funding and started working with community organizers. And we do a community lawyering model. We could talk after about what we do and the kind of nuts and bolts, and usually I spend most of my time at these conferences talking about land access. But I just kind of thought, okay, if urban agriculture law is going to be a thing, we should talk about how we do that. If lawyers are going to get in the mix, we need to talk about accountability, we need to talk about trust, we need to talk about cultural competency, we need to talk about power and privilege. And so that was kind of the conversation we wanted to have today. And really think about, those questions apply not just to lawyers doing this work, but to researchers, to policymakers, to foundation professionals, and how you work in partnership with the folks who are actually doing the work in the ground.
Who's in the room?
We want to start with finding out who you all are. So we're gonna get you up. We know I kind of want to have a nap, but and so we're gonna get you up and down and kind of having a sense of who's here. So we're gonna do this exercise we call Who's in the Room. Start with the question of what is your identity that brought you in here? What's the role that you're playing? So we'll start, and I'll say, I'll ask a question, and if you identify with that, then you'll stand up. And then we're going to talk about where people are from. So, I'm a farmer. Let me sit down so that people can stand up if they identify. Then they can sit down.
So the idea also is to look around and see who else I
connect
can
to. So I'm a community gardener. I'm a lawyer. I'm a policymaker. I'm a foundation professional. We wondered. We do. Great. Who else? I'm a researcher, academic. I eat food.
What?
I eat food.
Real?
And am I missing any,
Nonprofits.
what's that? Are you a nonprofit professional? And because I'm looking at you, Miriam, are you involved with a land trust? Awesome. Anything else that I'm missing? Yes.
Community activist.
All right. Community activists.
Right.
Second part of the room. So now you have a sense of what hats people are wearing as they come into the room, and some people are wearing multiple hats. And then I wanted to get a sense of where people are from. Since I don't know Baltimore neighborhoods, I'm just going to start with who's here from Baltimore? Baltimore City. Stand up.
Yeah.
Baltimore City, stand up. Baltimore County outside of Baltimore City, is that? Okay. Elsewhere in Maryland.
That's a slow ride there, Parag.
DC. Awesome. Philly, we gotta represent. Anywhere I'm missing?
Yeah, I think everyone sort of.
And then, yes.
Boston.
Oh, Boston.
Oh,
Stand up.
the Northeast. No.
Anyone from Worcester? I got it. What's that?
Went to college.
Awesome. And since I don't know neighborhoods, what neighborhoods are people working in Baltimore?
Sandtown.
Sandtown.
Bel Air Asset.
Where else?
Citywide.
Citywide.
I'm northeast. I'm trying
Cool.
to start Ashford.
Ashburn?
Citywide. East Baltimore.
Cool. Thank you. So now we have a sense where people are from. We have a little bit of East Coast diversity. And just, yeah, what brought you here? And then now we want to talk, so that was a who. Now we want to talk about why.
Right.
And ask some bigger questions. So, do you want to start with some of these questions? And I can be described.
All right, well, did you and you need to do too?
Yeah.
Sounds good. All right, so I guess what I want to know, and everyone you can call your answers out, and Amy Laura can write them down. How do you define urban agriculture? You personally.
A necessity.
A necessity.
A necessity.
Growing food in urban environments.
Growing food in an urban environment.
Food sovereignty.
Right. All right.
Food security.
Food security.
Spectrum from pilot commercial ventures to community garden to backyard.
Okay, let's hold up so Amy Laura can catch up with the writing.
So we got necessity, we've got food sovereignty, food security, growing food in urban spaces. I think I missed something.
The last one.
Spectrum
Spectrum.
from really commercial operations to community gardens to backyards.
What about the future?
Yes.
This is wonky, but systems change.
It's not wonky.
So urban agriculture itself is systems change. It's not the only thing, but yes. Anything else?
Radical.
Radical.
Self-preservation.
Community building, you get neighborliness.
Neighborliness. Yes.
Resiliency.
I know how to spell neighborly.
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 Well, it's not a word I suspect.
I know.
But
That's why
I wanted it to be.
So how would you like us to spell it?
Ness. Maybe that'll work. Neighborliness.
Neighborliness.
Yeah.
Neighborliness.
Yeah.
That's good.
Neighborly.
Any other
I know
ones?
my handwriting is not the best.
Reclamation. Reclaiming.
Reclaiming.
An agency.
Agency. I have a friend and he does a workshop called Rewilding. Any more? All right.
Those are good.
Those are great, actually.
Yeah.
Non-traditional answers almost, and I think that that it speaks to sort of how we're sort of thinking outside the box when it comes to urban agriculture, not just one specific way of seeing urban ag, but there's all these different ways and all these different systems and all these different terms and things that it gives to us in our communities, in urban communities. Okay, so let's talk about. Now we're talking about not on a personal level, but on an organizational level. How do we, or our organizations, engage in urban ag? So how do you engage? What do you do? What do you give in urban ag? So you can call it out or raise your hand either or. Yes.
We do meetups.
Meetups?
I'm at the Baltimore Orchard Project,
Uh-huh.
so we engage a number of ways. That's one thing we do, is to
Okay.
meet it when we're harvesting.
Oh, during harvest time?
Yeah,
So
it's
meetups
like
for
we're gonna,
harvest.
and we have these micro harvests, like where we find like 2 trees on West 27th Street, and they need to be harvested, so we'll do it.
So it's not just specific to your gardens, it could be anything
Oh,
that's
yeah,
going
it's
around the
just
city?
street trees, it's wherever we find fruit trees and where we have permission to harvest them.
Nice, I like that. Foraging, let me see, what's that?
Land preservation is how. my
Land
organization
preservation?
engages.
Okay, very good.
Connecting resources.
Collecting resources?
Connecting
resources, okay.
Marketing and education.
Marketing and education, right? Mhm. Now, is that, in the community-based? Okay.
It starts community-based, yes.
Mhm. Yes.
Advocating for and securing legal access
Advocating for legal access
and security.
and secure, so you're talking about land as well? Mhm. Yes,
Educating municipal officials.
Yeah.
very, very difficult.
Be careful what you say. I am one. Because I was going to say, where do we engage? I engage actually in a public hearing room.
Okay, very good. Nice.
And planning.
In planning? So where you, okay.
In Kingston, New York, work on engaging public officials, empowering local communities, advocacy.
All of that stuff, huh? Yeah.
Charrettes.
Mm.
Nice. Okay. Yeah.
Building an evidence base for health impacts and positive.
Building evidence base, how do you build evidence base?
Through research.
Through research, right? Okay, research, building evidence, yes. Did you have your hand up? Okay.
Supporting the grassroots.
Mhm. How do you support?
By providing access to resources. So legal support is one piece, but then other things. So business development and all these other things that people might need.
Okay.
I also engage by convening community conversations.
Community conversations, okay. Those town halls.
Yeah.
I like your term way better. Everyone's all in the town hall thing.
No, no,
Yeah.
it's got to be a conversation.
It has to be a conversation. I really appreciate that.
Relocation.
Relocation.
What does that mean?
Going in-
That means that you come from where you are to where they are and stay there
And stay there?
Mm.
Okay.
a lifetime, which will be the time when a child goes to school and graduates from high school.
So 17, 18 years.
Yeah.
Wow. That's dedication.
We do it.
Yeah. And you were at the first farm I mentioned earlier
Mhm.
today, right? Right. So you work with gentleman coming out of,
Same thing.
is it just men in the farm there? Because it seemed like it was just men. Is it just men on the farm there?
Yeah, no, women there.
Okay.
There are women there.
Okay, good. Yes.
I don't see growing food.
I was waiting.
Oh, yeah.
Got that one.
That's so fascinating that this was last.
Seed keeping.
Seed keep, thank you. Unless they make it illegal.
No, that's not happening.
No, I know. Interesting things that are happening in Pennsylvania and Maryland.
Interesting.
But not.
Those are great.
That's a great list too.
Yeah.
Should we trade?
Yeah.
So, so this, I love how there's very different answers in the room, even just in terms of what is urban ag for us. And then, so I want to ask this question that I'm asking all the time, which is, well, what are the, so if this is the necessity, and this is how you're engaging, what are the barriers to being able to do that? Yes.
Zoning.
Okay. Good answer.
That's for sure.
The
Other-
learning curve.
What's that?
The learning
The learning curve.
Funding.
Funding.
Political will.
Political will. Barriers are coming quick.
That's what I was
Eating
thinking.
habits.
Wait, over here?
Meaning you can't really grow, but you have your heart
Oh.
wants to grow.
So is that part of learning curve?
It's a barrier for me.
Okay, the black thumb, okay.
Black thumb. I hear that all the time. I got a black thumb.
I do for houseplants. Eating habits?
Yeah,
Okay,
Yeah, I got that.
Katrina, I think he said political will.
political will.
Political will, not wealth.
Oh, yeah, political will.
Maybe that too.
Right. That's sort of, yeah.
Other barriers that you see?
Lack of relationships,
Economics and then relationships?
lack
Lack of relationships.
Mhm.
Sometimes neighborhood capacity isn't quite sufficient to do what people want to do.
Neighborhood capacity. Sometimes there's also neighborhood resistance.
Yes.
Right.
So the two different, very different things.
Societal disconnect from the land.
Seriously.
Capacity and what else was that one?
Societal and neighborhood resistance, and then societal disconnect from the land, and societal disconnect from food
That's really what I meant.
by eating habits. Other barriers that you face.
It's food industry, really. But also land security.
Land security.
Mhm.
This is what we do on a day-to-day basis.
overdevelopment.
Overdevelopment. And I think a lack of this competition with development. Yeah. So yeah, over prioritizing private market development.
And these are barriers to urban ag and creating urban agriculture.
Barriers
that?
to being able to do what you want to achieving these
Right.
these goals.
White supremacy and patriarchy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Oops.
The actual condition of the land itself.
Mhm.
Expectation that produces picture perfect.
Expectation of produce at picture perfect. Expectation that
Mhm.
of trying to figure out how to say this, but the idea of profitability as the kind of profitability as the sort of the standard.
Is
Or the
that, so
goal.
is that the same thing now? Is that what you,
No,
is that two different things?
Two different things.
Okay.
we could keep going, right? What's that? I do have my own ideas, I know. I'm facilitating,
I
but
don't know how to categorize this, but it has to do with the environment. But all farmers fall into this category. Weeds, insects, that's the problems we're having. We have a weed that we could not get rid of, we had to shut down one time, and we had to put it on fire to destroy it.
Residuals of GMOs.
This happened, insects, rodents.
Yeah.
Natural predators.
Right. Okay, natural predators.
Natural,
That-
yeah.
uh-huh.
So, so we could probably keep going on this list, but I'll stop. This is this is twice as long as I think these two lists. And then this question, which is kind of the question that we're going to spend the rest of the time with, and it's sort of the theme, but why do we need to work together to overcome these things? Which is sort of the, it's kind of a rhetorical question, but if, why are we in this room? Why do we need to unite to get at these problems?
Power in numbers.
Power in numbers.
No one person or center can overcome the institutionalized issues. And there's more of them than us.
There's more of them than us. Who's the them?
The them are the folks that are creating the barriers. I have a problem right now in Howard County. There's a huge number of voters who don't want to see something related to ag happening, and they're wrong. So how do you tell them they're wrong? That's a barrier because there's more of them than us. Goes to political will for sure, but it's still about more of them than us, and they need to educate the them.
So, you want to revise the question? You look like you.
Yeah, so I'm thinking about the answer. Okay, let's just keep it.
Okay.
Yes, let's just
For now, I'm sorry, but that's how it feels sometimes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and I want to absolutely honor that.
All right.
Right.
But it comes to this question of power.
Speaking truth to
What was the
power.
second one that I missed?
There was from,
To share best solutions and strategies.
Not recreating the wheel.
okay, these are long answers, so we've got,
Not recreating the wheel.
not recreating the wheel, which is connected to sharing best practices and strategies.
Yeah.
Are we also creating a common story that can be shared?
I think there's,
Yeah, because I think that one of the things that certainly we see, or that I see, and that I find with all the time is how do you define this, how do you define that, what does it mean, how's it going to affect? And so if the story is well told, and it's a story that's influencing policy in a whole variety of arena, then it becomes easier, so it's a common story.
so sharing common, creating common narratives, creating common stories, and then Parag said, you said truth to power. Yes? Or no, Elder Harris said truth to power.
Truth to power.
Truth to power. Which I think is a good segue
Yeah.
to our next section.
Um,
Yes, one more.
Competing with agriculture subsidies. We're competing with the
So that's a
national
barrier.
food complex. Well, but that's why we need to collaborate, because we don't have the same kind of subsidy for this.
Ah, okay. So we need an alternative to create an
We need an
alternative.
alternative subsidy, and that's.
We
right
are
now,
our,
that's community.
we are
Yeah, I
all,
know that's a-
our alternative subsidy, in a sense.
But is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that we're, the only way to do this is together. That is power numbers, but it's also because we're dealing with a suppressed food crisis. So the only way to do that is to change the access equation somehow.
Right.
Shifting access, okay, changing the
I know
access
that's
equation.
complicated, sorry.
No, I like that.
Creating alternatives, this way, however, it, you
Yeah.
know.
But I think shifting the access equation, is that what you said?
Something like that, yeah.
Let's put that one up there too.
Yeah,
I like that
sounds-
one.
actually,
I think that one's going where we're going.
Mhm.
And then, so, I don't know if you see where we're going, but we're,
Oh, I thought you were facilitating.
it's a great, no, I know, it's a great, yes. This is a little bit of an experiment, but we're coming at this with different hats. We're coming at this with different lenses, but we have a set of common barriers, and there's really a reason why we need to work together, whether we're in a local neighborhood together, or we're in a city together, or a state, or we're working across city, which a lot of us do to collaborate. And so we want to talk about how we go about that, and kind of what are the values with which we do that. But in order to do that, we think we need to talk about power and privilege.
Right.
And so we're going to get you up. Yeah.
Again.
We're going to get you up again, but everyone to stand. Can we do this way? That we'll just, if you push in your chairs, we're trying to do a step forward, step back.
I'm trying to do a circle thing, but I think this is gonna be difficult.
How about a hand?
What's that? Do you want to do stand up, sit down, or do you want to
We're
do?
gonna have to stand up and sit down.
Or hands?
Okay,
Hands doesn't feel as
hands doesn't feel it right.
active.
Yeah,
Maybe we sit down. If we all stand up and then we sit down if we identify with the question.
yeah, so maybe not pushing your chairs out in front of you.
Oh, Miriam,
Maybe
it's
pushing
okay.
the side of you will be the best way. So we'll start standing, right? And then if you identify with the statement, you sit
You sit, and you see who's sitting with you,
and you see who's sitting.
or you sit who's standing with you.
All right. I should have put my glasses on.
Oh no.
Okay.
You need us to read these. Do you want to alternate?
Yeah, you want to grab some questions too? We'll each
Sure.
do one?
Okay.
Okay, you can start.
If you identify with the statement, sit down. So food access. Me or someone in my family has been or is currently food insecure.
All right, and everyone stand up again. So I have a college degree. Okay, let's all stand I went on to grad school.
My abilities have never been questioned because of my gender. My abilities have never been questioned because of my gender. All right, stand up.
If I were entering the workforce today, I wouldn't have a problem getting a job because of my age. That's true.
Questionable.
I don't know. I don't know.
Can we stand up against the trust?
Well, now
You
we're
wanna-
not in the middle, and now you
wanna-
mix the whole thing up. Visually, I'm all, sorry.
I know. We're getting.
It's harder to see, it's harder to see.
It's harder to see who's in when you're saying.
What's that?
For cognitively challenged.
We're gonna work through it.
Okay, I am physically capable of getting where I need to go without assistance. That one's a little easier, right?
People sometimes perceive my gender to be different from my gender identity.
All right.
I know. We can move on.
Yeah.
I'm the primary caregiver for a young person or elder in my life.
I know who to call in government when I or someone in my community needs something and believe that someone will call me back.
Oh, wait a minute, it's like.
No, okay.
Believe this.
All right, let's start with, let's do it in two parts. I know who to call in government when I or someone in my community needs something.
Right.
And then stay seated if you think someone's gonna call you back.
Only
Does this
the
include
county or
SStat?
state level.
Right, we should have, levels matter, right? I think we're talking about local.
You have a direct number.
I
Okay.
know.
Now we know who we need to know in the room, right? That's why we do this.
I or a member of my family owns the home in which I live. Okay.
I'm worried about me or my neighbors being priced out of my neighborhood. I'm worried about the.
Well, let's start with
Okay,
what
let's start with that.
I'm worried about me.
Me or my neighbors being priced out of my neighborhood. And then I'm worried about the culture of my neighborhood changing.
That's how you started to change when we got a Starbucks. I will tell you that.
I have access to ongoing funds that support my work. All right. I am dependent on short-term funding.
Sorry, what?
I am dependent on short-term funding.
What is short-term funding?
Like a short-term grant.
Like
You don't know if it'll,
Like a year.
yeah, a year.
Yeah, well, I guess I should get it.
I have no funds to do my work.
Like you're volunteer,
Yeah.
self-funded. For folks doing agriculture, urban agriculture, whether you're a community gardener, whether you're doing farming, my urban ag work is on land where I have legal access. Some not. I have concerns about being displaced from the land where I am gardening or farming.
I don't need a half seat.
I know.
On both of those, I'm like this.
You can go like this.
Right? In between.
I know the history of the community in which I work.
Yes.
Nice, I know, right? I have a personal relationship with the community organizations in the area that I work.
Say it again, sorry.
I have a personal relationship with the community organizations in the community where I work.
Getting a half seat.
Right.
Yeah, when you're citywide.
Yeah. It's hard on citywide, right? It's true. Okay,
Cool.
very good.
Thank you for your patience.
All right,
Oh,
so
that was great. Can we get a list of it?
if you could talk about that with your neighbor, right? So share a little bit of how, what came up for you during that process with the person sitting next to you. And then if you'd like to share sort of what came up for you while we're going through that.
You got like 2 or 3 minutes to talk to
Couple
the
of
person
minutes
next
to
to
talk
you.
about
I mean, the question is kind of general and not so it's like, have people ask that I mean, I really care about That's great.
So, relocation.
I like the way you put that.
I wish I could do
Walk in and no, it's true.
Okay. So I see you all are engaging in conversation. I apologize for breaking that up, but we have to move forward. So would anyone like to share some of the things that came up for them? Yes.
Well, coming from sort of a short-term research perspective, I'm new to Baltimore and I'm new to academia and I'm new to the community. So something I was noticing is I was interested in what people would say about barriers. And it's interesting to note here that maybe as opposed to some of the things I might have come in thinking, the barriers would be more, that they're more social. So I came in kind of thinking, oh, people are going to say access or the law or zoning, most things related to that in development, but most of them are social and political barriers, and so that kind of points to maybe we need a different research method, like more qualitative evaluation, more kind of ways of understanding social capital and urban ag.
That's interesting. It's interesting because what we're talking about today, you know, a lot of what we're talking about is building relationships, right? And so when we think about the barriers and we think about building relationships and how to engage each other, you know, cultural competency and privilege and those things, that is a huge thing because a lot of the barriers are social. So that speaks to that, right? Yes.
In my community, the people who are engaged in urban agriculture are still people who can afford to be. So whether it's the academic side and the policymakers or the volunteers, it's not the people who are supposed to be benefiting from it.
So you said now the people in your community,
They can afford it.
that can
So
afford
they're like the
to-
well-heeled young, you know, urban upstart who moved from New York City to start urban farming in my little community. And they're mostly white. And they actually are all white. I mean, no offense to anyone.
Say what it is.
So the challenge, the barrier is how do we make it actually, you know, walk the walk in a community that still has a 40% poverty rate, but it just happens not to be people who are doing their urban farming.
And I was going to ask you that, what is how's your community comprised? So the thing is that I'm thinking, that, you know, based in Philadelphia, is that really the only people who are growing, or that the only people that you know that who are growing? Because a lot of times in Philadelphia, what I find when I deal with organizations is that what they see, right, are the people who are in the urban ag movement, right, who are young white hipsters. But there are growers, long-time growers that have been growing in their backyards, in their side yards, in their communities for a long time, but they're not being acknowledged, right? But they still grow food, right? So,
We
okay,
get that
one
in
more.
Baltimore, for sure.
What's that?
We get that in Baltimore. There's gonna be a newspaper article about this cool gardening thing, so they're white.
Right.
And I'm like, I could fill an article with people who've been doing this for years and years, and they're black. And
Right.
it makes,
Yeah, so how do we bridge those, right?
How do we bridge it, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm sorry, so we have one more. What's that?
I was telling her, don't forget what
Bill Mueller is the founder of Habitat for Humanity in Americus, Georgia. He passed. He wrote a book, The Theology of the Hammer. We get people from all over the world to come in our community, and we look different, we speak differently, and but we all can swing a hammer.
Right.
So the culture and all of those little different things that makes us different, there was one common thing that we could do, and that's swing the hammer. Gardening is the same. Use that as the hammer. I was surprised to hear that, see so many people who are related to the different organizations of that community. I was really surprised to see that, because that's usually not the case. Because they come into your community, do what they want to do, think they can, but without knowing the organizers, and then they tell them that they can't do it. But yes, I was very surprised at that, and how we do that. As I said, we have relocators. We have a rule, redistribution, relocation, and reconciliation. And so those three can happen. But you have to be among the people who are, when we go to the tap root, when we go to the root of the problem, then our nation will be healed. And it takes all of us to do it. Regardless of what we look like, how it takes all of us to do it.
It's like a perfect segue.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So now we're going to break up into groups, and we've got 18 people next to us. So we're going to do 3 groups of 6. And you're going to you have like 20 minutes, so you really got to have a good time to get to know each other, connect. And you've got a task to do. For each group, I've got an article that talks about, since this is a law conference, it's a law policy advocacy issue. They're short articles, you're just going to take a moment to read them, but they deal with things some of these things, they deal with political will, they deal with zoning, they deal with displacement, and you're gonna work together, and you're gonna answer a couple questions. You're gonna start with, and we, do you wanna
We'll
write?
get it right, yeah.
We can
Let's write them down.
Write them down. So the first is, what are the changes you wanna see? So, law, policy, using law, policy, and advocacy, what are the changes you wanna see? And you gotta come up with 3 alternatives. So you can't come up with like, our only answer is X. The only answer is, for example, Philadelphia. The only answer in Philadelphia is to pass an urban agriculture ordinance and no other solution. So you gotta come up with 3 alternatives, which means that you don't need to come to consensus about one. You can come up with 3. So first is, what is the change? There are no wrong answers. 2, what are the skills and resources you need to make the change you want? And you gotta look around your circle and say, okay, well, what are the changes, what are the skills and resources we have around the table? If I have 6 people at my table, everyone's an expert at something. And one of the things I want to be explicit, we often talk about the experts as, me, the lawyer, or the planner, or the policymaker, or the researcher, but everyone's an expert in this work. And so we want to we want to really flip that hierarchy on its head and think about, well, what is everyone, the growers know on the ground what the barriers are. And so what are the skills and resources around the table? Who has access to them, either right there at the table or elsewhere? And then, in order to, like this, you're often coming up then with your action plan. Like, who do you need to talk to? What policymakers do you need to talk to? What elected officials do you need to get access to? That's not what we want you to do. We want you to talk about, how do you build trust to get this done? How do you go from a group of individuals to building a coalition? And think about, what are the voices that are not around the table that should be? And how do you share skills and resources in a way that promotes shared leadership? So I just threw a lot at you. So I'm just going to stop a minute to say, does anyone have questions, or does this make sense? I see 1 nodding head. I see 2 nodding heads. Okay, good. So start with your, what's the change? What are the skills and resources you have that help you share power? And then, what voices, tools, values do you need to create your coalition? And then the next step, if we were going to keep going, would be, well, then how do you create your action plan and get it done? But we don't have time to do that. But really, we want to focus on the internal work in this moment as opposed to the external work. Awesome. I think the easiest way is just to kind of count off by 6 and then stay with your 6.
By 3.
By 3.
Yeah.
Oh, and then we have to move. Okay, we could do that. So if you
Are we 6 groups of 3 or 3 groups of 6?
You are 3 groups of 6.
So
So I would just stay with your group.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Unless you know everyone that you're sitting with, then find a new group. But I think that.
Mix it up.
Cut off by 3, because I know both these
It
days.
might be
Okay, great.
So start with 1,
1.
and then
Unity.
2, 3.
So we're gonna count, okay, so the
So
group
just
has
count
decided to count off by
1
3.
to 3. Yeah, if we go 1 here.
1, 2, 3.
1,
3,
1,
2, 3, 1. I'm sorry, 2.
3. 1, 2.
Right.
4.
No, 1.
All right. So then where would you like the 1s?
So 1s can stay here
So
with
1's on
Lauren.
this side.
2's at the end,
2's at the end up there,
and
and 3's
3's
on
in
this
this
side.
corner.
1 over there.
1's over here.
Yep.
I was kidding because I thought I was last. I read the presenters would.
Oh,
Or I couldn't come around the table.
yeah.
All right. So we just
Here's your 1. I'll get up.
Yes, make sure everyone's sort of on point if they have questions about.
How about?
great.
We can get closer.
Yeah, and adult or something to try to.
Explain community law.
Amy, can we grab your chair?
You sure can.
Thank you. I know, I,
Sorry, I'm giving you your chair.
no, no, it's fine.
I'm Donna Cobb.
Yeah. We're like a
Working together, yeah, for,
Terrible too.
and, right, everyone sort of glazed over.
Thank you.
Coming,
I'm coming.
it's coming.
So you gotta get right. I know.
She's like, look, she's gotta help.
Congratulations to you, my brother.
Well, thank you, appreciate it. Yeah. Hey, yeah,
I got first prize on the design.
I folded a couple of things that I see, but whatever it is.
Good luck to you, my brother.
I know. Yeah, well, the exercise will be
Okay.
It's a pretty liberal group too, though. I don't think everyone
You'll
needs
get
a
it.
first.
And if you have questions,
Yeah.
call.
It's like, okay, now I see who we're dealing with. Right. Everyone else
So I highlighted what I think is the issue, but you'll see what
Have you done
speaks
this
to you,
already?
and let me know if you have
With
questions.
like stakeholders? Oh, nice.
Is this
And we
like
got
a real article?
Oh yeah, all of this is real,
All of it's real.
but not from any of our communities.
Cool.
It's all like Midwest and West Coast.
Yeah. Random,
Not real.
don't take it personally.
You've never done this?
How is that possible?
Since 1999.
Really? Awesome.
Right there, in that
I think
space.
it's because, you know, community lawyers are wrenching.
It's all like that.
I used to, I used to run live in the back of an husband for a shop in New Orleans called the First Whip that we named First French.
So many
So
layers.
have you been to Red Islands? So you know the folks in Red Islands?
No, it may have been years ago.
Yeah.
But not recently.
They bought the, they took over the edge shop, and now they're working on coal. Study group.
You've got, I got 15 minutes. Get close. Oh yeah, that's fine.
And what would one bedroom?
Well, there's that, also, Judge Michigan. The state side is.
First difference.
It transitions so it's slow.
Is there anything in the city code?
Just saying, I'm wondering,
it's called this nonviolent.
It seems to be whoever's kind of interested to join the they may have an issue that's really worthy of being addressed, but they're kind of taking some way
Yeah, so right now we're talking about hosting those. So one is just on
So in addition to these qualification constraints, in addition to what kind of.
So I would say one way you might want to change is
This would be kind of amazing, so we know all of it.
Well, it says initial offense, but there are some other.
Yeah, I
So,
think we should
I mean, I can,
what about
I can imagine that there be a very successful nonprofit you can say,
Yeah, so there's a whole list of
Hold lever with your tongue short.
Let's do a room full of thunder.
Yes.
So it could be anything, it could be to the policy, it could be to the program, it could be.
Well, there's a conflict, so how you have to address the conflict.
Well, the conflict plan is very.
Well,
We're trying to address the conflict.
you're trying to address the conflict within the argument. So there's a tension between, there's a tension there between the affordable housing folks and the urban ag folks. There are probably other dynamics as well. So to the extent you know about the other dynamics, you can bring that in, but how do you address, you're basically addressing the implementation of a project that has some barriers because there is this tension. So,
You can have a stand.
not zoning. Tax incentive. They've got implemented.
Yeah, I would like to
So for example, like they're talking about housing versus.
Right.
Generally speaking, the neighborhoods that are increasing.
Garden that's being displaced to create
The places where people are living, there's already housing. So it's not like people want to develop.
Oh, yeah, I know. So there's schools.
As far as I understand.
And then over there. Still some restrictions and they're not allowed to
That's true, yeah. So I guess.
I didn't even mean that. No, I just. Well, yeah.
So, okay, I'm gonna go.
Okay. Yeah. Oh.
For the toilet.
Yeah.
That's just why I went to the garage, like, look, I'm not even going to worry about that every 2 hours. I'm always doing that.
You know, like that was free parking.
Yeah, I'm always doing
Now
that.
I'm gonna
Tell
put
the
it
Kirtrina, there's free parking. There's, did you guys just, she said there's free parking.
I don't know.
Go downstairs. Yeah, I
So we have an in policy maker.
Oh, yeah. And usually this is framing.
Yeah, so use you as a like point lever support.
You're suggesting.
I actually wonder
In
access to
access.
have long-term relationships.
Plus you could think about
Certain neighborhoods are already developed.
Power of the press, man.
Right. And that's so important, it's just to like counteract those things people think they know. Misconception, that's the word. Yeah.
So what about you?
Potentially, but no one's trying to build it. Like I mean, but from all the meetings, people were talking
Well, but let's, you've got
like
this
because the
whole.
big thing are generally
Oh, you've done it this way, that's kind of.
and have much lower
There's
property
not really
values.
there. Here's another attack.
And people are talking about $2,000 apartments. They're not talking about.
Right.
So it's not like those people, it's like people who live in single family neighborhoods, pretty close to San Francisco or downtown that don't
Right,
want
so we have a power to the
people to build apartment buildings.
Well, in a sense, what you're saying, you're both saying is getting us back to
So how do we build trust in municipalities among ourselves and who else do we need to bring in?
this case, wherever you want to start.
Well, there's some dude who wants to farm mushrooms, and we're not talking to him. I mean, this is probably came up with some situation. And he's got some irate neighbors who thinks it's things, but actually it's something else. Or maybe this guy gets the wrong kind of manure. Compost, if there's a real life situation that we need to find out about. And we need to like find the people who are actually, this is actually affecting, because that's not what I do in my garden.
Because we did hear today about schools and church.
Or we just need to pick up the permit.
I mean, tell me, like, my favorite question is like, I used to say to myself whenever I got into this problem in front of me, like, what is my feeling about really about mushrooms? No, or is it about the person who's growing them? And
Exactly.
the relationship that
I
they
guess we
have?
also don't have to.
You know, I mean, it's just really understanding the dynamics between
Like this is
people
like, you
involved.
can also.
And actually, that can be an important thing, if you delve into it, and you find that you've got some really antagonistic
I mean, I don't know,
mushroom
it
grower,
didn't
who
sound
really
like.
doesn't care about any effects on the neighborhood, and who's going to solve the conflict. Right? And they've got antagonistic neighbors and stuff. Then you might take that information and go to these people and say, this situation
I think the
is
reason
just crazy,
is
there's not sort of right about it, right? Or there might be a really much more carpool situation going on. So you gotta talk because people.
What do they do? What are we doing in the city?
We can identify like the tensions and then from there, right? Like what the issues are. Because there's a farm stand, like where's that coming from?
Yeah.
Right, or.
Yeah, that's
You know, like two vacant lots. Maybe there's some other part of
All right, folks, just as a time check, we've got about 10 minutes, so if you're still on the first question, you might want to start.
So what is need to be?
What do we want to be done? Identify the tensions.
Are we supposed to be done?
How access is available.
Oh, I'll give them 10 minutes.
And which properties
As long as
will feel heard. Right, and what is the purpose of the tax?
Yeah.
Actually, provide jobs.
Right, after understanding what all the, understanding how much issues
Evaluating ways of providing.
I should see, evaluating.
When you have the
Where everyone's doing it.
We don't actually.
You know what, okay. We're not
Like that
impact.
Oh, right, right.
There's 6
that being said.
The community leadership.
Do we have here?
The community leadership. I trusted, we're more embedded with our other issues, not as much. But I have my boss.
It sounds like the city, so admitted it's talked about that.
I think we need to be better on the education front. I think we're not as effective.
The expectation that the city.
Education's really.
Education is really hard, but there's so much happening. There's so much work. And there's a lot of legal
So we're getting
There's a little bit of a.
So it seems that maybe the one that's practicing right now.
So, I mean,
I think it's great research, but it's something like that. Yeah, right.
so you're saying,
what the goals are.
know how, I feel like if you think about it, like I know community the best we can.
So, yeah, so part of the change is changing the area, changing the
And I mean, I think criminal justice, some, not so much. I feel like in education law, it's not a way to.
There's probably not enough people on that responsible bill.
Yeah.
The audience, right? That's part of the research.
You're one among many.
So that's
As much right now, some of the laws,
what skills
yeah, I
has
mean,
here.
it's, people
So
don't,
we listed a bunch of them.
you know, like people understand, like, so they categorize
Slippery slope argument.
like, the transactional is one of the tools that's useful, because a lot of people don't learn about stuff. Right away, so it's useful. Yeah, I've seen like workers raise
Okay, so trees. How about
especially for the second.
So you'd be helpful in helping us evaluate it.
Get the 3 questions answered.
Right, so I'm just like,
Somebody a good writer, a good social networker.
So I'm gonna add another question to the mix, folks, for a minute. Can I grab you for a minute? Just, I'm gonna grab you back here for a minute. 2 things. One is just make sure everyone in the group, I know they're mid-sized groups, but everyone has a chance to talk to each question. So think about that, the stepping forward, stepping back. Also think about, in this context of shared leadership, I'm gonna add one more question. I know we're gonna come to the end, but to be able to answer the question, if a reporter called your group, who's your spokesperson and why? So think about, in the context of how are we building trust, who's gonna be step forward to speak for the group, and that person will be the person that then presents for you all.
I think it's whoever synthesizes the great spokesperson and the farmer.
But you gotta come up with you have to come up with an answer to why.
Research as well.
Yeah, most of my students.
As a policymaker, what about your experience? Okay, that's not. What if you're teacher?
Well, okay, so, all right, well, so as a caterer then, what do you feel
So, it's a good balance.
Nobody addressed that, they just left it.
So, does that mean we need to write so much of who has access? And to whom?
If we could go back in terms of change, we have 3 things we can say about change. One is about communication.
Now, the policymakers are supposed to step back
about types of things.
to not be in the press. It's my experience. But like not the elected officials, but everyone but the elected officials. And those who might want to step back. Activist thing.
The idea of.
You might help us, but we don't necessarily.
When, especially when public officials are going to do it, but even when private is going to do something, there has to be a community ahead of time, so that the community knows.
I mean, if I was the one who ended up sitting writing this, like writing on the paper, then I would ask questions, maybe I would have thought about it. So that's going on.
And that's an serious one. I guess we could actually bring it back to the working space.
Well, that's a whole other piece of taken out, so take it as a park out, whatever, parking lot, and
All of
everything
the
else.
seniors collectively.
But I think we can tell, I think.
So one more minute, so if you just identify who your spokesperson is, and if you're you're not able to, like, if you haven't been able to get through everything, then maybe that's a possibility.
Our community, I am like a business. So I think all our approach goes, all right? And so I think that we want to see out of this is that the science is great. I mean, it is, but there's different issues regarding.
I think that's a little clear, we would have to change one more, because otherwise,
We don't change issues.
as you research it.
I mean, it seems to me that you have to change one action to much longer discussion issue about right now it's in Jersey City, New Jersey, through their about
Alarm stands to be specific.
That's guaranteed.
So building first would be why it's in your discussion.
No, you're good. I was talking, I'm the spokesperson.
So maybe, like, yeah, maybe it's like, maybe the reporter didn't do a good job and speak up to an area, in which case it wouldn't really.
All right, last thoughts, bullet points.
So I would just say, how about there?
All right, so it's great that everybody's really engaged. We're gonna try to actually come back together because we really want to see what people did. So,
I think so. Yeah, let's get everyone sitting around the table.
okay, so can everybody go back to their spots around the table? Or in your group, whatever, just so we can all see each other? No, it's a very good slide. Food come on, long day.
Taking a minute.
Wherever. No, I said that.
Okay, so.
You were following directions.
Hey, folks.
It doesn't matter.
Let's bring it to a close and everyone come back around so we can all see each other around the table. But stay with your group if you want to stay with your group. I like that. Does anyone? So what I would love to hear from people, what we would love to hear from people is answers to these questions. So share with us what nobody knows. You all had different scenarios, so you're going to have to share with us what the problems were, what the conflicts were. Can you come back around here so just everyone can see everyone? And so you have to share what the conflict is, and then what's the change you want to make? What are the skills and resources that you had around the table? And then what is the work that you did to build your coalition in terms of building trust, in terms of thinking about power and privilege, in terms of who was around the table and who wasn't? And then share with us, as the spokesperson, why you felt like you were stepping forward. I know that I threw that at the end, but we'll see how that works. But I think that in answering that question, we may learn some things. So does anyone want to start?
That's true life.
It is true life.
Awesome.
Okay, awesome.
All right, so our issue was a city governing body recently amended the laws regarding urban farming to identify what could be grown and what couldn't be grown, and one of the things that could not be grown were mushrooms, in part because, if we understood it right, they smell bad when you grow them, I guess in part because manure is used to fertilize them. There were other regulations passed that related to the size of the farm stand. Also, one that said that no one could raise livestock. And the fourth one was size of secondary buildings for use of farming activities. So,
And the brown.
and you couldn't do community gardens and brownfields. So there were a range of issues that were at issue with this new law. So we decided to focus most of our conversation on the mushroom issue. But in the end, I think we decided that our approach would be the same for pretty much all of the problems, on the mushroom problem. So the change would be that we want to allow mushrooms to be grown in gardens. And what are the skills? So we had a great, very diverse group. We have a policymaker, an educator, an advocate, 2 lawyers. So we had lots of skills there. Our resources were, we had access to city government representatives. We had, again, educators, people who could write, people who could organize people who could advocate, among a few of us here. On the Build Trust, how to make this happen, I guess, I don't know. I took notes, that's why I got to be the speaker. I'm a teacher. Yeah. And so, I think there was a great consensus in our group about that the first thing we needed to do was to find out what the real problem was. Like, what's really going on here with this mushroom situation, and that would require us to talk to the person who doesn't want mushrooms grown, to the people who want to grow them, to the people who pass the law and say, well, what was your thinking here, to really, really understand all the tensions that generated the law, and then to understand, well, then of course we had to understand mushroom growing. We have to understand all about, we saw mushrooms today, they did not smell, right? We just, that's a real food farm. And, okay, so, what else? So, building trust, meeting people, listening to people, understanding their problems, and that was the principal way. Barriers, what barriers do we have? Well, we're not really talking about barriers too much, because we seem to have a lot of the bases covered in terms of what we needed to do to perhaps advocate for change. I might add, just off the top of my head now, one barrier I've encountered many times in communities are unreasonable people who don't want to hear what anyone has to say. And then you have to have workarounds. And we did talk a little bit about having some workarounds, like how do you work around when you have people who don't want to cooperate or change your mind or be reasonable. Then we talked a little bit about our different skills, our resources, and power, and leadership.
We also talked about having a lot of different mushroom, like, bringing everyone together to eat a bunch of
Yeah, we're kind of like a mushroom event with mushroom food. And education, we would educate, because a lot of times this is about lack of understanding and lack of educate. People fear what they don't understand, right? And so that education would be a big part of how we might overcome one of these barriers. Did I get everything? Is that what you wanted to hear? Is that the kind of stuff?
Yeah, so how would you talk? How would you say, one of the things that you said about building trust, I guess the only thing that we heard outside of the mushroom event about building trust was to talk to the people who want to grow mushrooms. How would you, who starts that conversation? Where does that conversation happen? Out of the group and the skill sets that you have, and how do you engage those folks? How do you get to that point? Like to say let's talk is a lot more simpler than actually creating a conversation.
We talked about a sponsor convening a meeting.
A sponsor like
a neutral person.
A neutral person on both sides of the issues to convene.
Like once we understood the issues and who was involved and what the rub was, that we would try to get people together and bring a neutral party that was respected in the community to listen and
like
facilitate.
a CDC or something, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, there's any number of ways it can be done, but that it wouldn't be us necessarily, because we want the mushrooms.
Right, you want the mushrooms. You guys have agreed that you're on the side of the mushrooms.
Well, I am. I can't speak for my team, but right. So that once we understood that bringing together, I try to see if there could be a meeting of the minds about what the real issue was, and could minds be changed, and so it was really a lot about communicating and listening and making people feel heard about what the issue was.
Any change to your point of view?
So any questions from the
I'm sorry.
other? Oh, sorry.
Just one more. Miriam, you look like you have something
yeah.
on your mind.
Okay.
She had something on
For
her
me,
mind.
starting with it, my first thing would be to network and find like, who is this person, and go visit. Go visit people's sites, that's always, and if you show up and it's beautiful, you've learned a lot, and if you show up and it's actually stinky, you might choose another issue area. But you still don't want this law there.
Right.
But there's nothing like to visit community gardeners or urban farmers on their sites is one way to respect them.
Right.
That's a quicker way of saying what I was
That's good.
trying to
No,
say.
that's huge.
Yeah,
I think that's huge.
absolutely. Because sometimes bringing in a mediator, right, before you even approach someone,
Oh
could
yeah,
make you defensive.
no, our
That
ban
was
was
We
part
were
of
gonna
the research.
research it, and that was way down the road.
All right,
Yeah,
so
so
you
that's
had a
what-
plan. I was trying to get to the plan. Okay, very good.
The first plan was
there's-
personal interaction with the people who are involved depend on who has the best relationship.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Answer your question, the broad.
Oh, no, I was just saying if there's anyone from the other two groups who have questions for this group. Nope.
I mean,
Okay.
my experience, and I've done a lot of, I'm a lawyer, and so I always did defense work, and, you know, when I got these complaints on my desk, the first question I always asked, I told my group was, what is this really about? That's just because a lot of times it's about lack of respect, a lot of times it's about a lot of different things, you know, sometimes you can really solve problems by understanding that.
But it sounds like it was about a lot of different things with brownfields, for example. So I'm just wondering if it was also sort of, there's a knowledge gap in the policy making.
Well, that would be something we want to understand, is what was the basis for the rule change?
What the article doesn't say is this whole new regulation the result of years of study? Or is it somebody's knee-jerk reaction?
Right.
And that's obviously part of the research, is to understand what were they thinking.
One bad situation, one bad mushroom farm, or one,
Right.
or is it fear of liability when there actually is protection from liability? That's
When with
yeah.
brownfields, you can find a way to, you can say, this is what makes it safe, this is what.
Okay, just thinking, being conscious of time. This is great. This was
good.
a lot of depth there. Do you want to go? Cool.
So our article was about, in DC, they have funding to upgrade schools, and they were gonna build a faculty parking lot next to this one school that's celebrated for being awesome. And neighbors in the area started to hear rumors that the parking spaces were gonna be built over a portion of the Twin Oaks Community Garden, which has been in the neighborhood since the 60s. And people were complaining that, you know, the city did not make any attempt to tell anybody in the neighborhood about it, especially at the garden. But there was also some feedback about someone who was a gardener, but also had someone on the list to go to that school, that this is something that the school might need in terms of trying to expand the school. The city eventually admitted its mistake, that it didn't reach out to anybody in enough time. And then the last sort of point is a quote that says, "It definitely sets a potential precedent for destruction of community gardens at the whim of a perceived higher development need." So we were talking about some of the things we would have liked to see changed. One was just in general creating the expectation that the city is supposed to communicate with the community if they're going to do anything like this. If the expectation is there, then they're more likely to do it, and the community has more of a precedent for reacting if it is not accomplished. The second was, in this particular case, there should have been a neighborhood review process that involved the school, that involved the community members, that involved the city, and that did not happen. And then finally, something we would like to see changed, this is sort of in general as well, is creating the idea that what the community needs is the higher purpose than development. So instead of development trumping all, what the community needs most would be the deciding factor. And that's obviously a really long way away, but it's a goal. So in our group, we had an elected official, a scientist, a community organizer, a farmer, and a lawyer. So we pretty much
You basically had the
have a perfect team to make this happen. So we're pretty good to go. And we're going to solve all the world's ills over here. And I think in general, creating trust, it starts with communication, period. So I mean, when people start talking to each other more, then you build trust inherently. That's all.
That's it?
Yeah.
Trust building. How are you gonna go about doing that?
We kind of ran out of time.
We had a lot of
All right.
conversation. I'm trying to stay on with you. So that's okay. It's all right, because this is, you all were building trust amongst yourselves. And that's why I let the process sort of happen. That's what it is.
Okay. And why were you the spokesperson?
What did you say?
Why were you the spokesperson?
Because I talk a lot. I don't know. Because I'm the community organizer over here, so I know how to talk.
It was an interesting, okay, for me, right, watching and sitting in the process of you all choosing who was going to lead the group, and sort of everyone sort of didn't, no one wanted to say who should do what, and so when I was there, and I was only there for 10 out of the 20 minutes, right, and you spoke the majority of the time, right, right, and so when you all chose, and then it wasn't you all chose, it was the lawyer, gentleman right here, who chose you as the speaker, and then you said, oh, I'm a community organizer. And I said, so maybe I missed another part of it, because because for me, watching, being there, you were more in the lead of the conversation when it was there.
I know I have a tendency to do that, so I would never volunteer unless if they
Right.
pointed me, I would have did it.
So it was interesting that you didn't choose her, right? So I just want to point that out. Okay.
Yeah,
that
I
was
think
it.
something that kind of ended up happening is everybody sort of shared, and then when we were running out of time, I tried to synthesize a little bit, so that might have been part of the reason.
Maybe so. Okay.
All right, San Francisco.
So, our article was about the recent ordinance that was passed in San Francisco, which gives a pretty huge tax break to people with undeveloped land if it's used for farming for at least 5 years. So the tension is sort of set up as people who want to develop housing versus people who want urban agriculture. And the changes that we came up with, I'd say simply could be put into one, like clarifying the purpose of this tax credit. So it's not clear if the outcome of the tax credit was to create jobs with urban ag, was it to produce food, was it to give community benefits, was it just to use the land? So like being clear about the purpose. Second was like a reframing of the conversation. So right now it's set up as urban agriculture versus people who want affordable housing. And so thinking about reframing that conversation so it's not combative, at least with those two parties. And then the third thing was to evaluate which properties are given or are able to be given the tax credit. So to just think about some of those things. With regards to skills and resources, things that we listed, there's some overlap between people, but we have planners, policymakers, activists, legal professionals, civic engagement or like political or community organizers, citizen foresters, awesome. Program evaluation, academics, research, networking, social media, so like lots of different skill sets. And that's basically as far as we got. We were talking about a couple of things, one of which was like a little bit of confusion about the like line between hypothetical and reality, like are we the people doing the changing, are we just thinking about who would be doing the changing? And the spokesperson question, I feel like we're all pretty hesitant, and then we had some criteria, like maybe it should be a person who's a farmer, or maybe it should be a person who is low income but also wanted urban agriculture, and then I sort of was volunteered.
Wow, you had the most, so it's so interesting who got to what. Like even in 20 minutes, which is a while, but there was a lot to do. First group got through it, like you went A to Z. You focused.
Law school, Donna told me how to like keep things moving.
That's the cartoon. You guys focused on relationship building, it sounds like. And then you had a whole process that nobody else had in terms of selecting a spokesperson, which was that's really impressive. So it's just really, what's that?
It didn't take that much time, but
still, you had
We also spent more time defining the problem.
Well, given the political nature of your issues, that made a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
Right.
To find sort of the poster child person who could speak to this.
Right.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense.
And I think that's important, right? So in this situation, when we're talking about building community and building community trust, the question that Amy Laura presented was really important, as in who spoke to value and leadership, right? When you choose who's going to speak for the group, it spoke to value and leadership, and also value it, and also understanding that community, right? And somebody who's gonna speak to that community that people in that community will see, right? And listen to and hear. And so, so the process that you went through is important because those are things that we should be listening for, right? When we're engaging community, when we choose different things, when we choose leaders of groups, we should be, making sure that we're looking for groups, people who represent those groups that we work with, right? And making sure that we put them in the forefront of what needs to happen because that's how we share power, right? That's how we share leadership, and that's how we change the power dynamic, right? By valuing those people in community skills and community knowledge.
But also making sure folks, whoever is stepping forward has the tools to do that.
For the record, the reason him was because he was very articulate and a good social networker. And I hope it didn't.
So basically you were gonna start tweeting the whole thing.
Yeah, right.
Really?
Like he's got the youth thing happening.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this was a little bit of a grand, we're coming to the end, but this was a little bit of a grand experiment for us to be able to bring the community lawyering kind of values, framework, questions, things that we talk about every day into this conference. In the last, few minutes before we head down to coffee and the next, any reflections from you all about, is this what you thought you were coming into? What did you think? What will you take away? Yes.
So, with the Land Trust perspectives, right, my industry group is the Land Trust Alliance, and they have this ginormous conference, and they get around and they talk about how we have to bring diversity in. Oh, I know, let's ship the kids out of the city to the country and show them nature. And that's kind of somehow as deep as the conversation gets. So this is just really, really refreshing. Like, okay, can we just talk about privilege? Thank you.
Cool.
I was really surprised and pleased at the diversity in the room. There's a really good array of people in here.
Overall, for a person who is not in this life and I'm completely new to it, people like Marion and Maui are just pleasurable and they just want to help. Like they want to help you, help them, help you guys are just great. I must admit. I mean, you just like, what do you need here? Here's this person, call this group. They have this. It's really great. It's refreshing.
Other reflections?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, this is really eye-opening, because I'm in the urban ag bubble, I guess, and all I know is farming, and all I know is farming, and it's nice to see the different aspects from lawyers, the community activists, the elected officials. I mean, it's really nice to see it, and I've never seen these different aspects, so really eye-opening for me.
Yes.
I'm gonna take away the co-facilitators of this because I appreciate that you represent the thing that you're talking about.
We're working it out. On the spot. Cool.
From your perspective, how did this work?
It's a great experiment to me, so it's great.
I mean, did it go well?
Yeah, it's really interesting to me. Like, I think, yes, it absolutely went well. I think what I'm taking away is I love these lists and how the lists sort of bring us to these conversations. What I need to figure out is how do we ask these, I feel like I'm still questioning how we ask those questions.
You know what'd be great is,
Yes.
are you taking pictures of these lists?
Yes.
Can you get them back to us?
Sure.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I can get so what I didn't do is actually send around an email list. We have a sign up, so if people want to put their name and email, we can share the agenda and we can share the pictures that have, so yes. What's that?
I can keep them for you also.
Oh, sure.
Cool. Did everybody get that? I'm just not a tweeter yet, so I'm sorry. It's gonna pull me into.
So if you want to sign up, you can give us, this is actually our coalition email, sign-in sheet. So you're not really joining our coalition by signing there, but it was the one I had when I was running into my office and the firefighters were standing outside yesterday because the pipe burst. So.
I think that there are a lot of good relationships that sort of budded on this, and I'm hoping that resources will be shared, right? Because everyone's in different aspects, and because there's so many people in the room that can give, that those relationships will continue. right?
So are they gonna
What I'm
share,
hoping to happen.
are they gonna share our emails?
Well, no, unless you ask them to. I don't think that's normally what we do, right?
Oh, at this conference?
No, you can share emails with somebody if you'd like to.
No, I just.
Even the conference as a whole,
They will.
even the conference as a whole.
Yeah.
It's a great thing to ask.
I was like,
The combination of
the combination, he was amazing.
They could tell people at the conference, or they can send an email to